Yeah, perfect. So, a very good afternoon to one and all present. This is the 18th edition of the Words of Wisdom Wednesday, the flagship event of Jagran School of Public Policy and International Affairs, Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal. I, Dr. Devanshu Srivastava, the head of Jagran School of Public Policy and International Affairs, welcome each one of you in this Words of Wisdom session. And today's edition that we have been bringing across, we have a very young, and I would not only name him to be a young person, but a very talented person as well in the fields of strategy and partnerships. He is the lead for the strategies and partnership at the Adani Group, Mr. Divay Pranav. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of the Jagran School of Public Policy and International Affairs and the young policy minds which are there across. Um, it gives me immense pleasure to also inform you that we are also live at our YouTube channel of our university, where people from the outside domain can also take it across. And the next 45 odd minutes, I'll pose certain questions and we can keep it in the mode of a dialogue form as we have discussed that particular day across. So before I move across to my first question, I'll quickly take this a minute to introduce our speaker for today. Although an introduction, I guess, would not be so many words to describe what exactly and what all he is bringing across to. Divay Pranav is associated with the Adani Group as the lead strategy and partnerships. He is responsible for discovery and ideation of new strategic growth, opportunities, and facilitation of partnership with foreign investors in India. Prior to this, Divay worked for over 5 years at Invest India, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Invest India is the national investment promotion and facilitation agency of the Government of India and manages several important national missions such as Make in India, Startup India, and the Agni. At Invest India, they will lead several teams and initiatives such as investment targeting and facilitation from countries like China, Taiwan, UAE, and Singapore. On the functional side, his contribution to the industrial location assessment, cost competitiveness studies, and public policy advocacies for the FDI cases in India. He facilitated the market entry of over 40 foreign companies in the sectors such as electronics, real estate, chemicals, textiles, battery, and storage solutions, infrastructure, etc. After his BSc in Physics Honours from Hansraj College, University of Delhi, he is also a gold medalist in his MBA Finance and Strategy. Divay has keen interest in studying public policy initiatives across the globe and has been invited by several universities in China for lectures as well. He has also contributed to research papers and books on manufacturing policies in India and global geopolitical events like US-China trade war and its implication on the global trade. His latest intellectual contribution is for a joint publication by Peking University and the University of Mumbai titled Tailspin, The Politics of India-China Economic Relations. He has actively worked on several policy formulation, exercise along with the teams at the central government and state governments, such as adjustment to the FDI policy, designing new incentive schemes for cluster development and export-oriented industries, national manufacturing policy, bonded warehousing, national logistic policy, etc. With this, I invite you, sir, to please address this gathering for things before we take our two or our questions across. Welcome you, sir. Over to you, Divay.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastava, for that warm welcome and the introduction. It is an absolute pleasure to be here to interact with the students of this university, and I believe it's a wonderful initiative on capacity building for public policy making, which I feel is a very emerging and interesting field that we are currently seeing in the market. I also thank the faculty members and the students who have joined this session and those who are watching it live on YouTube. So as an introduction and the theme for this session today, I'll be focusing more on the mindset of public policy making as well as the opportunities this particular field has for students who are currently specializing in this subject. I would also touch upon some tips which students can keep in mind, some kind of organizations which they can look at from a career perspective. Also, at the same time, I'll discuss some trends that we are observing in certain industries and sectors, what kind of challenges, issues, or debates these industries are going through, and how young public policy professionals from universities like Jagran Lake University can contribute to it. And plus, what is the career prospects of people from the private sector to contribute to public policy discourse in the country, and some opportunities that you can also explore at the international level. So to start with, I'll just introduce, because I think Dr. Srivastava has already shared some of the highlights of my career. But I'll also take you through, what was happening in my mind. How did I perceive this particular industry? Why did I choose to join this particular function within organizations? And how my journey has been so far. What kind of observations I had as for public policy as a profession. So if you look at my journey, for the first 5 years after finishing my post graduation, I worked in research and consulting industry. I started my career with CRISIL, where I worked in their research and analytics department, and then I moved on to join KPMG, where I was part of their investment management advisory practice. After 5 years, I thought that probably I want to do something which is more implementation oriented. And that's when I observed this opportunity with Invest India. It was a very unique experiment because generally, if you look at government roles or government profiles, then there is a set pattern through which people get hired in the government roles. So generally, it is through UPSC or some other examinations which people pursue, and then they get into working with the government. But this was a unique experiment because when Prime Minister Modi came into power, so he decided to launch this Make in India program. And this was in September of 2014 when this program was launched. And at the same time, they were looking to build capacity to hire professionals from the private sector, which can act as the interface between the government and the investors which are looking to invest in India. So I was amongst the first 9 people who were hired by the government to create a small team which could respond to investor inquiries, which could help investors in understanding the policy landscape in India, opportunities which India has to offer as a country, especially across 25 sectors, which were identified as high priority sectors for investment by the government. The role was also to help investors interact with state governments. So I very actively worked with government of Madhya Pradesh, government of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, especially in the industries and commerce department, as well as you would be aware of, that every state has an industrial development corporation, which is responsible for development of industrial infrastructure. So we started interacting with these bodies. And in this due course, I think I learned a lot of practical things about how governments work in India, how India is perceived as an investment destination, where are those challenges which we need to tackle if we want to increase our FDI inflows or if we want to create more jobs in the economy, and how do we encourage Indian investors as well as foreign investors to explore India as a broader market, not only to cater to the demand which is arising from the fast growing economy like India, plus also use India as an export base. And I would say that although I was never trained as a public policy professional, but in due course I learned a lot of things about it, and I wish that had I like formally got trained in this subject, my knowledge and my advisory that I was extended to my clients would have been more better. But I think life teaches you a lot of things in a practical format. So, and that's what I was grateful for. So after spending 5 years in that role, or 5.5 years in that role, I decided to pursue opportunities in the private sector. And that's when I moved to Adani Group. And currently I'm again working in a very similar domain, which is the interface between the public policy as well as the investment landscape in India. So I lead their strategy and partnership team. So on the strategy side, I look at which new industries or sectors could drive our top line. And again, this role requires a bit of a business perspective. You must understand the industry, you must understand the strategic priority of the group, the kind of synergies we can draw with our existing line of businesses. And plus, I also look at what new investment or incentive policies are being introduced by the central government. What are the new initiatives which the states like Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Odisha are undertaking, because that's where we have bulk of our properties, and we believe that these are also very attractive investment destination for companies which are looking to set up their manufacturing facility or logistic operations in India. And besides that, I also look at the partnership portfolio, wherein we interact with a large number of stakeholders which influence public policy formulation as well as investments within the country. So that would include the embassies and the foreign missions, which are located in India and have their offices in multiple other cities in India. I interact with trade bodies from countries like Singapore, Israel, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, which are very important countries from FDI perspective. I interact with industry chambers like FICCI, CII, SOCHM, NASSCOM, which are the national chambers we have and play a very significant role in shaping up the public policy discourse. And of course, I interact with a lot of professional services organizations like Big Fours and management consulting groups, which help companies with their market entry advisory. And again, I feel that because I never studied this as a subject, I did not really observe public policy profession as a potential career opportunity. So I never understood this profile until I actually somehow accidentally started working with this broader ecosystem. And then I realized that how important this industry is. And this industry is not only about knowing some government officials or having some good network or relationship. It's much more than that. And this industry requires, it's a combination of multiple skills which a strong public policy professional team or a public policy professional requires to succeed in this industry. And again, it changes from industry to industry. Traditional industries have a very different setup of public policy team, whereas some new age industries like electric vehicles, or if we talk about hydrogen, if we talk about entire social media platforms and apps that we have in India. So every company would require a small or a big public policy team that helps as interact that organization with the government, both from perspective of public policy advocacy, where these organizations require changes in the policy or certain regulations, or in traditional industries, this plays a role of I would say regulatory compliances. It plays a significant role in addressing any challenges which the broader stakeholder of industry throws up. And I'll share a few examples with you. And accordingly, depending upon the nature of the industry, depending upon what are the impending issues or challenges that industry is facing, a public policy professional needs to be agile and adapt to these requirements and help that company overcome the challenges. So a public policy professional could be a public policy advocacy professional, or it could be a professional which is helping with crisis management in certain situation. In some situation, that person acts as an advisor to the government, especially where the new policies or new incentive programs are being drafted. So industry gives a lot of inputs to the government bodies and organizations when these policies are being framed. And in certain situation, this person plays a broader role of shaping up the narrative of policies that particular industry needs. So they also end up playing the role of a communication specialist. And of course, CSR, corporate social responsibility, as we understand, it's also a regulatory requirement in India to spend money on that particular profession. And plus, corporates believe in sustainable and inclusive growth of business. So CSR is also an activity which in many organizations I've seen is part of the public policy profession. So with that introduction, may I request Dr. Srivastava to raise a few questions where I can accordingly draft my thoughts and share with the panel today.
Sure. Thank you so much. I guess one wonderful sort of a foundation laid for this wonderful session today. So we have titled it as "Wow, Words of Wisdom." That's the basic idea. So take it ahead. And I guess what we just studied, uh, because I know what the set of questions would have been for you. So I can take it like, yeah, you have sum it up to all my questions. So I guess it is gonna be a very a very discussion way where we can come across with many such things. And I guess I'll come to the first question, which you have rightly mentioned as a hint to your thing, that yes, you do not belong to a public policy educational background. It's more towards the experiential background that you have developed through the public policy. My first question that when I was reading or when I was seeing your particular profile, I saw a BSc Physics honors, a person from Hansraj College, University of Delhi, and then moving towards your MBA in finance and strategy, which itself it was something that I was very keen to ask to. But if I can come across with a total question. So, what importance does these subjects in the graduation or the post graduation or one comes ahead, especially when he or she is willing as a young public policy professional or entering into the public policy field itself? So how important these subjects, basically why I would feel this question to be an apt one, because I see a BSc physics, I'm seeing an MBA strategy finance, and then I'm seeing Divay being a policy and a more towards of that particular thing. So how these things were all clubbed together, and what would be your thing like when these students who are being offered the courses of public policy at their graduation and the postgrads, so how are they gonna capitalize over the same?
So, Dr. Srivastava, I believe that career is something which is it's a process of self-exploration and self-discovery. So, when a student is, let's say, in the graduation or post-graduation stage, we don't understand the industry or the way the industry works or way a particular profession works that well. So all we have is a very broad idea about what are these organizations which are operating in this particular segment trying to do, or as an entrepreneur what I could pursue in that particular sector. But I think with experience, with some self exploration, we tend to understand that where do I fit in and what are my particular skill sets and how I can contribute to a particular cause. And I believe that it changes over a period of time. So in my graduation, in my post-graduation, I went through a big shift. So I changed from being a science student to a commerce student, and focused more on finance and strategy over there. And later on in my career, because I worked in a research organization, analytics organization, then I worked in a consulting organization, and then I worked in the government sector. But I think every profession, every subject that you study, it helps you in shaping up your mind, your perspective towards a particular problem. So my skills of research, analyzing industries, keeping an eye on the domestic and international trend that I gained in my first two organizations, it has helped me, it has served me so well throughout my career. So when I was working as a public policy professional in West India, or a market entry specialist, as you, that's a better term for that role. It really helped me because when I'm talking with let's say a global international organization, and I'm asking them that why don't you come to India and start manufacturing smartphones in India or electronic devices in India. So to be able to hold that conversation, you require your basic preparation. So I would study about that industry. I would study about the demand supply gaps that exist in the Indian market. I would study about the policy which our Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has drafted, where we are trying to be self-reliant in manufacturing of smartphone. I would study the international trade data. I would study that, what other competing nations like Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, what these countries are offering to my target audience, to these investors, which currently we are not offering. And where do we have, competence over these countries when it comes to offering a large market to these manufacturers, as well as, the entire cost to serve, which these companies will experience when they will come to India. So I think every job, every work, or any subject that you study, it really helps you in building up a perspective towards a problem. And I believe when you shift your subjects, or when you shift careers, when you change from one industry to industry, you carry these transferable skills with you. And in many cases, like for example, research and content has been my hip pocket skill, and I use this so often in my career because I'm so strong at doing that. So if I am put to a new work or new role, it takes me lesser time than probably some other professionals to study a market and to understand, let's say, financial statements of companies. I do know that where are the pockets of stress, where are the pockets of opportunities, both at a company level as well as at industry level, and even at the national level. Because remember that in my kind of a role, I also have to see that what China is offering to a particular organization as an economy that India is not offering, or where are our advantages which probably China will not be able to offer. And as a professional in this industry, understanding the geopolitics, understanding the pressures beyond the numbers and incentives are also very important. And I would like to share this example of U.S.-China trade war. You know that bilaterally these two countries are in a loggerhead for last 2-3 years, and it's such a big opportunity for developing markets like India, because we have been trying to get a pie of the global manufacturing in the country for so long. And China is really good at it. So what that country has done from a perspective of development of infrastructure, development of logistic infrastructure, development of skilled labor pools, it's a story in its own. So they have done a remarkable work at this. And even today, from a perspective of cost competitive manufacturing, they are probably the best country in the world. But the global geopolitical landscape is no longer willing to accept that narrative where the global supply chains are completely concentrated in China, and every other country is dependent on China for every small need that we have. So they are willing to look at a China plus one strategy, right? So as a public policy professional sitting in Delhi today, and in fact, when this really started, it was 2018. I knew that there was a lot of work done in the government of India by various ministries to understand that how can we really get a pie out of the businesses which are moving out of China, plus what new industries we can look at as a country. So I think that's where I think public policy professionals play a very significant role, because when it comes to shaping up new policies which can be which can alter the landscape of a country, which can make us competitive. So these are the kind of inputs which I've seen that public policy professionals from have offered to the government in the center. And I'm sure you would have heard about the production linked incentive schemes. This scheme is actually an outcome of all the efforts which were done by a range of industries, and plus a lot of willingness of the government to offer financial packages to somehow, wherever we feel that we are not competitive, or there is some bit of push required, some kind of support required, so that the cost to serve, which is eventually the number which drives companies to invest in our economy, that can be reduced. So how can we look at that? So I think uh, that sums it up for me, because your education, your background, what you have done in the past, it plays such a significant role in making you a more complete professional. A tip which I have for people from public policy, courses that you're currently running, is that develop a very strong sectoral bias when you are studying. So look at the industries where policy professional would be required in future. So I can clearly see that tech is going to be such a big area. So we are currently working on the data protection bill. It's currently being evaluated by the parliamentary committee. Plus, there is a lot of 5G is a new thing that we have currently started looking at. Plus, there is entire decarbonization panel, whether it is solar energy generation, wind energy, or hydrogen as a new fuel, electric vehicles, advanced chemistry cells. So there is so much which is happening. Ethanol, so blending of ethanol in petrol, biodiesel as an industry. So these are all new industries which are, currently there is a lot of debate happening in the public policy discourse. And as student of public policy, you obviously you don't have a choice, because you have to read everything which is getting published, every new policy which is being, which is open for public debate. You should participate in those public debates as an institution, give your suggestions to the government organizations, read all the policies, read newspapers, and understand what experts have to say about the new policies which are currently being drafted, both by the central as well as the state government departments. But also at the same time, you should, it's absolutely important for students to look at multiple sectors and identify those sectors which they are really passionate about. So, for example, I believe that the debate within the electric vehicle or electric mobility industry is very different from the debate which probably is happening on OTT platforms. It's a very different debate. So in electric vehicles, the entire industry is struggling to balance the demand supply narrative. So government has come out with this new policy called FAME scheme, where they're trying to increase the adoption of electric vehicle by for public transportation as well as for personal usage. On the whereas on OTT is more about what new regulations we can bring out to monitor the content, to screen the content. Whereas similar kind of debates are now happening on the social media platforms. So the skills which public policy professionals, or the knowledge which public policy professionals require, is a little different. So for having conversations on the electric vehicles, you got to be a guy who can understand that what is the cost matrix of an organization, because that's when you can go to the government and discuss what kind of new incentives are required. You have to study internationally other markets. For example, China is a big market for electric vehicles. There are many countries in the Nordic region which are big markets for electric vehicles. Can you bring those best examples, best policies, and feed that to the government organizations, which is Department of Heavy Industries in this particular case, or Niti Aayog, which has been asked by the government to look at this industry. We are looking at creating self-reliance in advanced chemistry cells, because roughly 30 to 50% of cost of an electric vehicle is the battery. So how we can reduce the cost of battery manufacturing in the country, how we can attract global organizations, because as of now, Indian organizations don't really have that capability. So we are looking at that, how we can attract some global organizations to come and invest in the Indian market. We are also looking at that, how we can get access to rare minerals, which like lithium, cobalt, and other chemicals which form part of this value chain. So there is a lot of debate which is going on in the government at this moment. So I believe young policy professionals should try to be up speed. We should read all these discussions. We should read any new policy, rules, regulations which are coming out in these different industries, and develop an interest for some of them. Of course, you will not be interested in each and every industry, but the industries which I mentioned, I believe they are the future of this country. And bulk of corporate value creation, or the bulk of corporate profit is going to come from these industries. So it's good to align yourself to some of these industries, and then attempt to join public policy teams, or some other related team. It's not necessary that you will join a public policy team only. You may choose to work in some other departments within these organizations, but industry knowledge and content is absolutely mandatory. Like, there is no way you can escape or get a public policy role even at junior levels without showing interest or aptitude for your craft. So that's my advice. Besides your books and curriculums, which is set by the institution, I would also suggest you to look at some sources which are, like, for example, Press Information Bureau, PIB. So when I was in my previous organization, it was like my daily routine to look at PIB press releases of various ministries, because that's when and that's how you can know that what's happening in that ministry, what's going in the mind of professionals over there. And since I was responsible for international outreach, I used to reach out to companies overseas to attract them to Indian market. So I would always go back and check with the respective additional secretary or joint secretary in that particular ministry, that what's going on in their mind, what is their plan. If we bring this company in, what kind of support do you think government will be willing to extend? And that sheer knowledge which I used to get from PIB press releases, as well as other sources. Like for example, I believe if you go to the website of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, you find a link for questions and answers. So you know that what kind of questions are being raised by parliamentarians in upper house and lower house, and you know that what are those pressing issues, because policy formulation, there are a lot of inputs which government and a ministry gets, and some of those inputs also come from the opposition parties through multiple channels. So you should also understand that which are those burning pressing issues, which, and how is that particular ministry responding to those questions. So that used to give me a lot of input and data about what kind of things or leeways we can get in the public policy. Plus, what are the challenges which currently a section of the society or our industry is facing, and how we can sort of solve those challenges through my work. So that's what I focused on. So that was a long answer to your short question, but I felt that that's important. So reading about industry developments through newspapers, through PIB, because that's purely government. Even state bodies have these gadgets where the public publish a lot of office memorandums and notifications from time to time. That's absolutely a must for a public policy professional.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Divay. And I guess that was one of those particular things which have been. So if I'll just take a minute to like confine your answer, what he suggested was number one, be inquisitive, and that's where plus be in a sector. You can start off with a sector. Gradually, with your time, with your experience, you can definitely expand those particular things. A wonderful piece of advice by referring to the PIB press releases. One thing, with his permission, I would also add what, as me as a law student was also doing, I was referring to the law commission's website and to what even the Niti Aayog has been, because they have been keeping those things open for the public also to respond on to. So law commission websites or the reports of the law commissions were very much handy to let us know that, okay, this law has been made and this was the requirement. Some of them was not accepted by the government, but some of them even were accepted after 5 years or 10 years. But that would give you a good background. So what he said was to be inquisitive, read a lot, whichever sector you are aiming on to. And I would agree to him that yes, few sectors which he said is the near future or the coming future as well. Apart from that, there are many sectors which even we, as Divya and I myself, have not yet thought of would be a thing. And I'll name it the pandemic itself. So the health sector, which saw so much boom from the 2020 to 2021 market as well, was one of those particular answers as well. So wonderful answer. And I guess you answered the two questions which was there. And I guess this is becoming a practice for this particular session that we are taking on to. Now, with this, I'll move to the next question, that what mantra, because I am now seeing and I'm getting very much fascinated with what all you have done to what you are doing presently. So your mantra to this young policy fellows here, to how to step up or how to frame their own career path in the policy domain?
I think the first advice which I would give to any student, because for this particular session, I'm just thinking that I used to think when I was doing my graduation and my post graduation. So we don't have much idea about the practical aspect of things, which are happening. So my first advice would be that just flirt with your possible selves. So what does that mean? So I don't know after 5 years what I will do in the industry. I have absolutely zero clue about it, right? And the best way to learn, what will work for me. There might be, EVs offering great opportunities, tech is offering great opportunities, but as a person, I'm not attracted to tech. I don't understand, I of information technology. So how do I contribute to that sector? It's not necessary that you have to be a public policy professional. You can choose to be in some other industry. And one way to do that is that you undertake a lot of internships and practical exposure to these industries, so that you understand that, how does it actually feels, how does your day look like when you join public policy team of a particular industry, right? What kind of debates are happening in that industry? What kind of work is being undertaken? What kind of communication that department is sending to, let's say, a government office? And if you really like it, or if you think that, that's not my cup of tea, so you can still adjust and you can jump on to the next opportunity. So I think internships are a great way to do that. And that's what I say, flirt with your possible self, um, because it's only with time, with experience, we understand that, what do I really like? And that's a process of self discovery, which all of us go through. I have also gone through. You have seen my career. It's like all everywhere, like from science to commerce, and then from research consulting, then government department, and now back to an Indian corporate. Maybe after 5 years, I might do something else. But one thing is for sure, that when you give yourself enough airtime and enough opportunities for self exploration, then you really understand that, what is something that you enjoy and what you do not like, and you can always make adjustments to your career path. So that's one advice. Second advice is that, which most of us don't do, because as students, we think that at times our batchmates are our competitors, because they are going to, sit for the same placement sessions where I'm sitting. They're going to appear for interviews for the same organization where I'll be appearing. But I feel that your batchmates could be, can make so much difference to your career, because if you gel well, if you bond well with your batchmates, if you share a very strong repo, and if batchmates feel that it is their moral obligation to help each one of them succeed in their career, so I think you can really make a big difference. Because I think in today's world, content is democratized. You can go to multiple MOOC sessions, online platforms where you can learn about public policy. But what you don't get is good networking and good opportunity to interact with people who have a similar mindset. So I think as professionals, we must absolutely, make it a point. In fact, you should hold a wow session, like give them it should be their moral obligation to help each other, because some of us are very smart in every batch. So I'm sure that we will join great organizations, or we'll start our own businesses in this particular industry, and we'll learn tricks of the trade faster than some of the other batchmates. But if all of us are well networked and connected, so I think there would be a lot of learning and sharing of ideas and experiences that will happen. And you will generate a lot of social capital. So students coming out of Jagran Lake University, if they stick together, they can really become a very formidable force, and people in the industry will recognize that, people coming out of this university are great resources to work with. So, and I think that is absolutely critical. We have seen this idea succeed in other professions. Like if you look at civil servants in India, they're so nicely born. They understand they follow this cadre principle so well. Likewise, we have seen this in social work. So there is a cadre of people. We have seen this in political parties. We have seen this even in other professions, like IIM students do this very well. IITians have their own cadres. So same I would suggest for you. And thirdly is, develop a business, or I would say specific mindset, not only business mindset, because some of you might choose to work in the field of corporate social responsibility. So whatever mindset you want to develop, I would say that try to go as deep into that particular industry or that particular problem, and evaluate that issue from multiple angles. And the way you can do it is through your networking skills. So, for example, in my profession, it's absolutely important to know that, which particular company is now interested to invest in Indian market, or which international organization is looking to expand beyond their home country, right? It's absolutely well. So this is called international intelligence on what's really happening in our industry. So to get hold of that information, I have to network with a broad range of people. So whether they're journalists, or as I mentioned, trade bodies and embassies, and Indian missions abroad. So I need to do that. Likewise, for a public policy professional, you have to deal with a very, very broad range of stakeholders. So in fact, you work in a multi-stakeholder environment, right from a government department, central government ministry, maybe a regulatory authority. You need to work with civil society. You need to work with NGOs. You need to work with media. You need to work with your competitors also at times to for public policy work. So I think you have to be open. You have to be agile. You have to find common ground. So even if you're working with your competitors to push for a particular issue forward, which means that you should have a mentality to find common grounds, and that's what is a trait of a public policy professional. I find that public policy professional, the good ones, are very open for collaboration, even in competing environments. So I'm not talking about forming cartels, but let's say when you are advocating for a common issue which the industry is facing. So through industry chambers like FICCI and CII, where they are very focused on grouping the industry together and build force for changes. So I've seen many competitors sharing a common table, discussing the issues together, and framing up the point, helping the government organizations frame their thought process. And I think that's absolutely critical for public policy professionals. And you can network only when you have that mindset which is agile and which is open, which is not fixated, and I think that's very, very important for profession. So if I have to sum it up, so your batchmates are your best friends. You must and absolutely must coordinate with them. You have to develop deep sector knowledge. Of course, public policy professionals are generalists because they must know about each and every aspect of a company. But again, there also, depending upon the nature of your industry, you can develop specializations. As I mentioned, give you an example of EV, where it's more about demand and supply, whereas in tech, it's more about regulations and it's more about content screening and other things. Likewise, I feel that there are some personality traits. Public policy professionals have to be excellent communicators. So if you feel that you need to improve your communication, by the way, is not only English. So you can speak excellent English, but you might not be in no position to become a public policy professional. So communication here means that you know when to say how much, what is the right time to convey a particular issue, how many issues you should combine together and present to somebody, right? When you should not speak, that is also communication skills. And I've seen very, very good public policy professionals. They're very good at it. So the moment they enter a room where where a round table is being organized, they just read it so well, and no matter what they were asked by their organizations to speak, they know that how much to speak and where to curtail. And that's again, I believe that because that comes with a little bit of maturity and experience. Um, and uh, and this is absolutely important because often when we are just starting our careers, we feel that communication is about looking good, having good verbal communication skills, but at times it is a lot about non-verbals, and it is a lot about when not to speak. So at times silence is the best means of communication. And this is the trait which I've seen in a lot of American MNCs. So their public policy professionals, they have nailed this art so well. And I don't want to name them, but they're absolutely the best in the industry. And whatever they say, whatever they choose not to say, that is so closely watched by policymakers because that's the kind of weight that they've gathered over the year. Content knowledge, as I mentioned, some of the best public policy professionals, they are absolutely genius. Like they are the masters of their industry. They have spent years and years in that industry. They have practically seen all aspects, everything in that value chain. So that's why I believe that content is the king here. Often we think that it's the connections, which government official or which organization you have a good repo around. So often we think that that's important, but I think it's the content. If you have the content, you can always build connections, and you can always sustain those connections. So I think uh, that's my advice, which I want to share with students today.
Thank you so much. I guess few things that we have been listening to all the past sessions as well, but how you have just limit those things as well. Like communication skills was one thing, but adding a controlled word to that thing would be a wonderful suggestion. Again, the connect was one of those particular things, and I have always said that there are many C's involved when a public policy comes into head, where content is one of those, communication is one of those, connect is one of those, and brilliantly answered the way. And that one thing that but it was really fascinating about that answer, and which I guess each of the policy students, and I guess that was also what the public policy school here at Jagran Lake City University focused on. We have developed a policy analysis lab, and if you abbreviate it, this is called as PAL, the best friend that they have came across, which is a lab where even the faculties sit with the students to frame the policy. And just as we told you that since July 2020, that was just our born time, within the short span of 8 months, we have been out with two such of public policies which we are trying to send to the government. And that was again something that we have been daily witnessing. One is with the environmental policies with the higher education, and the second is the policies for the welfare of the domestic helpers at each of our places. So something that has been a prominent thing with each, which is common to, I guess, 90% of the house in our country. But parallelly, it has been taking it ahead with that particular point as well. So thank you so much for that thing. And with the paucity of time, I'll just take the second last question. And it's more towards what have been a small hint to all your answers. And it's more towards where I am stepping as that connect between the industry and the young policymakers. Now, can the students seek and can they be fortunate to work and learn under your able mentorship when it comes to the policy making process?
So absolutely. So from on a project to project basis, we can definitely collaborate, and I'm willing to share more practical experiences that I have in this industry with students, and that's definitely a possibility. Some of the other areas which they can definitely explore, as I mentioned, in 2014 when I joined Invest India, at that time it was an experiment. Government was just looking at how they can build capacity around some major initiatives that they were undertaking. You would be happy to know that this model has been very successful. From a team of 9 members, Invest India has close to 200 people now on their board. So there is a massive buy-in which the government has given. Likewise, this model has also been adopted by Niti Aayog. So there is a terminology called young professionals. So they have adopted. So they hire a lot of people from the private sector. Besides that, to my understanding, each and every ministry in the central government has some or the other programs. So either they're hiring people as consultants or as young professionals who are working with the secretary, additional secretary, joint secretaries, directors on a day-to-day basis. They're more or less part of their team. So I think professionals can also look at that. Some ministries, I think last week or 2 weeks back, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, they have released a notification. They want to hire some interns. But if you look at it, they want people who have tech backgrounds. So because they want the work to be extremely tech specific, and that's where I think the industry knowledge is so important. Or besides that, there are organizations, as I mentioned, FICCI, CII, SOCHAM, NASCOM. They also do tremendous work on public policy advocacy. FICCI, CII, all of them have sector specific and country specific teams. So within sector specific, as you mentioned, that there is a team for higher education in FICCI. So when you are presenting your paper to the government, maybe government is open for it, maybe they're not open for it. But I would suggest you to share these findings with the sector teams of FICCI and CII and SOCHAM. That's another big way to build momentum around policy changes that we want. Besides that, I mentioned that all the embassies in Delhi, so every embassy would have a trade and commerce office where they look to hire professionals who understand government policies, who understand trade policies. So that's another avenue where people can work, and they hire people from the private sector. Besides that, there are trade organizations. So for Japan, there is a body called JETRO. For Kotra, for Korea, and there is, Austrade for Australia. So every organization, these foreign countries have their offices in India, where again they look for people who understand the policy landscape, the incentive landscape in India, and policy professionals can look to work over there. There are organizations who specialize in public policy consulting. So I know about APCO Worldwide. There are organizations like Chase, which are working with large number of corporates and advising them on their public policy outreach. Again, that's a wonderful avenue where people can work. So there are many avenues which students can explore. Likewise, I believe that there are a lot of Indian organizations also, because even within Indian organizations, public policy used to be more like a government relations work, where you would have, people in their 50s and 40s, they used to work over there, maintain some relationship with the government office. And I think that's also undergoing some kind of change now, because organizations realize that public policy professions can be put to several other uses. So I know that in some organizations, public policy professionals have a sales angle also, because what happens is that you are interacting with government and PSUs day in and day out. So you understand that what are their priorities, and imagine for an industry like information technology, who is a big customer in India? It's the government, because there is this national e-governance program. Government is trying to offer its services through digital platforms, and you need people who can reach out to those departments and can help them participate in tenders. At times, you need to do a bit of concept selling, because at that time, government department is not really thinking about that project, but you think that it can make a big difference to the outreach of that organization, so you can pitch that idea. So I think a lot of public policy professionals could also explore government sales and business development as an opportunity. Imagine a sector like telecom. 5G is such a big technology deployment. So if you happen to be a network solution service provider, so for you, government policies and government advisory is so important. Why can't you work as a government sales professional in that organization? So there are many avenues which a public policy professional can explore, and that would happen only when you understand your industry so well. So if you are just a generalist, who knows about the policy thing, but you don't have in-depth insight about the industry, then that kind of a shift becomes difficult. But if you have that bent of mind where you're willing to look at a particular industry in greater amount of depth, then there are so many avenues which students can explore in their career. And that's the beauty of this profession.
Very true, very true. And I guess the few of those particular ideas which I would definitely want myself for my students to explore. Thank you so much, Divya, for that thing. And I guess this would be my last question before I open the questions to this audience for their questions across. I'm getting a couple of them on the YouTube live session as well. Uh, Now, this question is more towards, and I guess that's an only question where I, as an institution owner or an institution person, would be taking that thing ahead. So, is there any opportunity by which the Jagran School for Public Policy and International Affairs can work together in any of the academic partnership in the policy side with you, both in the personal or the professional capacity? We would like to have that thing because, again, as I told, it's a very nascent school. But yes, we have that particular vision to get that industry driven thing, so that whatever the industry requires today, whatever the corporate or the policy side requires, we can produce those particular things. And with this direct intervention between the industry and the school itself, we can definitely come ahead with that particular demand of what exactly the thing is. So, Devay, please, if you can just help.
Absolutely. So I think there are many avenues which we can explore. And I believe that India as a nation, there is a lot of collaboration required between industry, academia, and the government. This partnership is very good in some of the other countries. China is a very good example of it. Somehow we have been lagging behind, but I think there is definitely a scope, so which we can definitely explore in the due course. As I mentioned, some of the new industries, like for example, hydrogen is a new industry which is currently evolving in the country. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, they're trying to set up a hydrogen mission. Likewise, there are some other big problems. So, for example, solid waste management, wastewater treatment. These have become like pandemics in the country. So, and nobody has an answer to this. So, and there is a lot of research and collaboration required with the academia to look at these issues in a deeper sense. So I think so these are some of the suggestions which I have, that some research can be undertaken over there. Besides, I believe that there is a lot of requirement for international good practices within the policy frame, because often I find that nowadays policymakers in Delhi, they look for evidences whether a particular policy or the particular initiative that they are undertaking would be successful or not. So, and they need some international examples, what other countries have done in a similar domain. So I think that this is an area where we can undertake research and identify some good practices which are suitable for a developing economy like India to pursue at this point in time.
So thank you so much, Divay. And I guess we'll definitely post this session. I guess this was one of those particular things, but post this session, we'll definitely get in. So to explore any of these particular opportunities that can be strengthened, we'll be more than happy and more than willing to do those particular things. Now with this, I guess we are, Divya will just take, we are just 5-10 minutes more we'll be taking across from your time as well. So I'm just opening this session for the questions. Anyone who has this question, kindly unmute and also on your webcams, introduce yourself and then take away the question with our speaker today. So with this, I'm opening this platform now for the questions. In the meantime, I'm just taking a couple of questions from the YouTube live thing as well. But one question from the audience here, and then we'll move towards the YouTube questions.
Good afternoon,
Yes.
sir.
Good afternoon, Prerna. Go ahead.
Sir, my name is Prerna Jaswani. I'm a first year student from JSPP IEA. I have a question. What were the struggles that you faced while you in your growth period? What were the major struggles that you faced?
So thank you, Preda. So I think switching careers and especially in the growth phase, the main challenge is that somebody needs to buy in that idea. Of course, you should be self-aware that what are my core strengths as an individual, and which I can leverage for the next big shift in my career. So that self-discovery is an important thing. Plus, the organization where you're moving next, they must understand and recognize your strengths. So as a professional, you have to display those strengths in the right way. Now, for example, as I'm saying to you, that content is a big strength for any public policy profession, for any profession for that matter. So, I focused in my career, I focused a lot on writing and contributing to industry knowledge. So whether it is writing for international journals or research papers or writing for magazines or contributing to books. So I've done a lot of work around content generation myself. And that is such a good testimony to my belief that, content is the king. And when I say to somebody, or when I try to convince a potential employer about it, that I'm very strong at this particular area, then there are many examples of which I can mention on my resume, and I can convince the other party. So as students also, and I'll really encourage, that's why I was saying that you're reading PIB or reading all government policies and notifications which come out, and then you should come out with a point of view paper. Maybe you can publish in the journals with which institution is thinking about publishing, or you contribute to some of the projects which the institution is undertaking. Because when you write something, then you realize that what kind of holes do you have in your understanding about a particular topic. And it can only happen when you write it, because no matter how much you talk, but you may not still understand that those gaps in the understanding. But when you have to write a particular topic, or when you have to get something peer reviewed or get it reviewed by an expert, the comments that you get from there, those comments help you to get become a better professional. So I would say that from a person to person, there could be several challenges that you might face in your career, but always be ready with a plan. Things or the values that you have, you must have examples of how you have displayed those values in the past. So for me, content is a value, knowledge is a value. So I have enough examples to prove it, and I am very proud of that. Likewise, for somebody, their communication skills are a great value that they might have to offer to somebody. So you should have enough examples of where you have displayed good communication skills in the past. So you should participate in debates, or you should become a panelist wherever possible and contribute to your trade, which is public policy in this case, and have those examples ready. So I think that really helps.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pranav. Any more questions before I take the questions from the live session? There are a couple of questions there. Anyone who wishes to take the question can take it. I'll take the questions from the YouTube after the second question. Or I guess I can utilize this opportunity by the time we come across with this second question from the audience. So we have one question here with the YouTube thing, which reads as so what would be your take when we plan for certain policy and it is not accepted by the government or the concerned agency? So is it not demotivating or there across, or what should be your take on the point to be motivated to keep on doing or to keep on giving the provisions ahead?
So, and I completely understand this question, because I think another trait of a public policy professional is patience, because patience is virtue in this profession. And the reason for that is that more successes we see, there are more failures, even more failures than that. Even in my career, I've worked on many policies which I've never seen the light of the day. The entire work was done, the policies have been drafted, or the consultations with the industry has happened. But what happens is that government is very concerned about what goes out in the market, or what is the impact which a particular change or a policy can drive. Especially, I've seen that the changes which are legislative in nature, they are difficult to push. Whereas changes which are more procedural in nature, and where government can feel that there is a big buck for money, they will go ahead and do that. Likewise, certain things might be very good for the economy, or they are great for society, but still it does not get the right attention from policymakers at times. And the reason for that is that government is not endless, so there is limited capacity over there as well. And I feel that in that limited mind space, they try to achieve the best that they can do within their own resources. So I feel that at times it is demotivating, especially for things that you feel that can make a big change, but it is not being currently addressed by the government. But believe me, sooner or later, there would be a stage where it would get accepted. So I think as a policymaker, never get disheartened, be resilient. There are a number of ways in which you can influence public policy discourse. So I think writing on topics, contributing to debates and discussions is one form of doing that. And I think for all public policy professionals, my suggestion would be that be resilient, hang out there when the timing is right, when policymakers have the right mindset, they have the right push, then they will definitely listen to valuable suggestions which come from the academia or industry. So I think that's what I would suggest. And more often I've seen that people who are resilient, who stick around, they are successful in this trade, and they see big trophies and successes coming out of their efforts.
Perfectly correct. And I also guess I've taken a hint from your previous answer as well, where you were saying that there were public professionals who were coming, although what they have been briefed and what they have been made a story across, but when they enter that particular room, they know the controlled communication power, what to speak, how much to speak across. That's one of those particular things. Which would also be that even what they were briefed to speak, they are not allowed, or they themselves chose not to. So that is also one of those particular things. So wonderful. The next question is in relation to your experience again. You have worked both at the government as well as at the private area of the policy. Which you enjoy the most?
Well, I think when you work with the government, you enjoy the scale more, because you can touch upon broad aspects of the macroeconomy. You analyze policy from perspective of broader good, which industries in an economy can drive or firms within an economy can drive. So that's very interesting. But also at the same time, it would mean that government also looks for strong evidences. So if I'm giving $1 as an incentive to somebody, what is the kind of economic output I can get back? So that calculation is also there. Sometimes these policy interventions are successful. At times they are debatable. So that's the beauty of it. So it's very macro, I would say. But from an industry perspective, I've seen that suggestions from the industry are more specific because industry knows that how does the cost sheet of doing a particular activity look like from a manufacturing perspective. I'm saying, or what does it mean when US puts restrictions on visas? So what does that mean for their business? So they understand that pretty well. At times government understand mobility of professions should be there, and that's in general good for collaboration between companies, and that's good for the Indian economy. But they may not understand the real impact of it, that how does it really impact the project execution. So I think suggestions from the industry are always pointed, and that's why I feel that in the last few years government has become quite open. I generally feel that what industry has to contribute and what meaningful suggestions which industry has to contribute, which are evidence based, which are backed by numbers, those arguments are generally heard by the government. They may not agree to all point of views because at times they believe that a suggestion is more driven by the particular business model which that company is running, and it's a very specific ask which is coming from them. But if the industry can prove that this is an industry-wide problem which impacts the competitiveness or which impacts that particular industry, then those suggestions are definitely heard and in some cases implemented or included in the policy suggestions also by the government.
Yeah, so I totally agree, and I also feel that, and I guess you would also agree with the same. When it also depends upon the perspective of both the industry side as well and the government's perspective as well. Also, the time frame, like even at this time, certain of the policies which in relation to the 5G or other things would have been there, but the more focus would have been towards the pandemic, the pharmaceutical, and especially to that of those particular things across.
I mean, if you look at 5G as an example, so 5G policy is a debate between, something which is like a trusted value chain concept versus, cost of implementing a solution. So if we look at this problem purely from a perspective of cost, then we would include few other players in our 5G trial, and certain other companies will qualify for that. But here, the government is thinking about a broader good or something which will keep the economy secure for a longer term. So I think that's the kind of balance which government looks at. Whereas for a corporate, at times it is completely driven by the profitability or return on investments which the shareholders can drive. So I think that's the kind of difference which I've seen even in my current role. At times we look at things from the profitability perspective, but when you understand the government perspective, when you understand that how important self-reliance or Atmanirbharta is for an economy, then you are at times willing to overlook a pure profitability driven narrative, even within a capitalist setup.
No, perfectly answered, and I totally agree that yes, one where at what point the government thinks, and especially the 5G was one of those particular, because very much interested. And when I read that what was that one particular clause which prohibited and everything. So I guess yes, with the government they have their own reasoning that was all backed across with other things. So with this, I guess we would be coming to the end of this particular session, the 18th edition of the Words of Wisdom. And believe me, each of your words were a big wisdom, not only to the young policy makers here, as well as we as faculties, because we also get an insight of how to approach bill. And that's the best thing which we have been following at our school, is towards to have that industry driven policy, to have more towards a practical approach, getting to students involved in the policy making, taking or striving for the projects where we put the students along with the faculties to work on together. And organizing these lectures, I guess, is also the broader concept of what you said of communicating and getting into the social world and to get that mindset. I would also thank Divay for conceptualizing the topic for today's session. And it was his idea only to get across the mindset of the policy professionals. And this is how what, and I totally agree that the past an hour that we were discussing and through very of the showcasing things that he portrayed should be the mindset, not, and if we develop it, as soon as you develop it, I guess that's the place that we've been taking across. So thank you, Divay, for this wonderful session. Thank you for accepting our invite. I know you have been busy with all the things across, but sparing out time, especially for the young policymakers out here at my school, it's really a blessing for them. It's really a guiding path, I would call them, and especially the way as to what are your personal advices, both based upon your knowledge as well as the experience that you had, have been very, very, very fruitful. And I assure you this, that post this session, we'll definitely be in contact to venture out certain of the possibilities for them in the policy domain. And it would be really nice to have you here. I know it was a pandemic time. We have managed this on a virtual scale, but we would love to host you physically in Bhopal at our campus, in this lush green campus. And when you said that you have been working with the state governments of Madhya Pradesh as well, the MPIDC particularly, where you were referring on to, so it would be a pleasure to host you. And we all pray that this pandemic sooner and sooner gets over across, so that we can have your presence, and that interaction with the students would definitely be a great benefit once again. With this, I thank you once again on behalf of Jagran School for Public Policy and International Affairs and my own personal behalf for making this session possible. Thank you so much, Divay. And definitely, I'll write back to you with all such things across. I'll also share the recordings and other things for you, which is already circulated to all the social media handles of our university. And we love to have any of the opportunities which the young policy minds can have through you. So thank you so much, Devin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastava, for having me for this session. I really enjoyed sharing my experiences with the students and with the faculty members here. And Bhopal is one of my favorite cities. I really love the way that city is spread out. So I would love to join you for face-to-face interaction. And till then, let's stay connected and exchange more ideas on how we can build capacity for public policy
Totally.
professionals.
And one very important thing which was there, I saw that you have an inclination towards writing as well. So any of those possible things where these students can be can join you for writing skills, or if you can give us the writing, we'll be more than happy in doing that, because this is something that we have been establishing as a practice where these students can contribute more towards writing. And as you all also said, that writing of something gives you that a good reading gives you a good writing. That's only what I have been following in my life. So that would help them also to understand that particular areas and do particular things as well. There have been a couple of more questions popping in for me, but I'll definitely share those on your email so that we can get an answer and we can get the students satisfied.
Great, wonderful. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks a lot, and take care. Stay healthy.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.